Thank you very much for the invite. This is a little bit of a different presentation than I'm normally used to giving. It's a little bit philosophical as well as covering stuff we may not have fully implemented yet. So we're kind of pre-announcing work to see what we should prioritize based on your interest level. So prefix this going into this presentation. Human inclusive robotics is something I'm personally passionate about. There's a lot of rhetoric in industry today and in the news about displaced workers. And this is something I'm personally passionate about and want to do what I can to help with workers, help provide a migration path to new activities, or to provide what we can from a learners and getting started perspective. So this actually covers a couple of different topics within this, hey, keep humans in the loop work stream. So my name is Amadio. I'm a development lead in the Azure Edge robotics team. One question we get all the time is, Microsoft does robotics? Yes, we do robotics. We had a robotics platform many years ago. I worked on it. We actually were building a first-party robot before we shut that down. And I'm now working on robotics in the edge of Azure. So what is human inclusive robotics is something I'll cover in a second. I did want to touch on what my group does today and what we're currently maintaining, so that if you're not familiar with our work, you can feel free to explore this. So our organization has carved out, we are the ROS team within Microsoft, but we're also robotics not related to ROS. We build significant number of ROS nodes for Azure and Windows. We do some development, what I call RoboOps or DevOps for robotics. We maintain a Visual Studio Code ROS extension, which is shockingly popular. I think we've had 90,000 downloads in the last few months. So feel free to check that out. Works on Linux and Windows. We spend a significant amount of resources on ROS on Windows. This covers 5 different distributions of ROS, including Melodic, Noetic, Eloquent, Foxy, and we're working on Galaxy, although Eloquent is going to go end of life here soon. We are also engaged heavily on the in the community, so through the ROS-TO Technical Steering Committee, through the Industrial Consortium, as well as we're active on ROS Answers and Reddit, as much as we can anyway. This graphic is actually fairly old. We changed our backend and no longer get this data, but I thought it's still a fun graphic that shows that ROS on Windows is worldwide and we have tons of deployments. We are working on retention. So you install it, you go, hey, this doesn't work, I need to revert back. What are those things? So if you've ever used ROS on Windows and decided not to, feel free to reach out to me. Okay, so that's our pitch for our team. Is there any questions before I move on? Comments? Feel free to try and stop me if you have a question. I don't have the message chat. So if somebody can pump up and say, hey, there's a question in the chat window, that'd be great. So a few topics I want to cover today. A little bit of a historical perspective of why human inclusive robotics, and then some of the investments that we are making or would like to make in the future. So historically, I actually minored I have a sociology minor focusing on technology and society. What that degree focused on, or that minor focused on, was how does technology change society and how does society influence technology throughout history? One of my favorite stories was actually the folklore of John Henry, which was a worker during the Industrial Revolution. He led a crew of diggers as the trains were expanding through the west of the United States at a time when machines just didn't do the job. Picking axes or digging tunnels and with shovels and pickaxes was good work. It was, but it was also quite dangerous. They introduced the steam shovel during his tenure, and he was afraid for his crew, that his crew would be put out of work because of the steam shovel. So according to the legend, he challenged the steam shovel crew to a fight, and to see who could finish the tunnel first, the steam shovel or human power. Well, as the story goes, human power won, and right after he broke through, he died of a heart attack. Was one of the stories that I've read. I like this story as an allegory for today, because there are a lot of people who are really concerned about their jobs. But when we look back at this story, same allegory, the same story, we would think that digging tunnels by hand is cruel and unusual punishment, that the machines are there to help scale people, to provide safe outlets. Those same people who are digging tunnels are now working these steam machines and building the steam machines. So what can we do to keep humans in the loop, upskill, and provide pathways for people? So that's one of the things that I'm passionate about, and what drives some of the work streams that we have down the that I'll talk about today. Any questions about that? It's a fun story. I would actually read about it. There's some folk music around it. It's kind of fun. I want to make sure that robots work for people, and that it's about keeping them safe, keeping them healthy, scaling them, allowing people to do more precision work. So what does that mean? We've coined the term, actually, sorry, flip the slide. The problem space we're trying to address is building robots is hard, working robots is hard, designing for multiple robots is even more difficult. Interacting is unnatural. Intention and nuance is just missing. So let's talk about some of those individual pieces. Citizen roboticists is a term that I use to refer to people who are not trained roboticists, who want to use robots in their environments, whether it's for personal use or whether it's in the factory. The citizen, it plays off of a Microsoft sales pitch for Microsoft Power Apps, who talk about citizen developers. And these are people who want to leverage and program environments without actually being programmers. So I think this is going to be a fun way of going about it. So one way we can address the citizen roboticist is through the maker community. There tends to be the makers are people who aren't trained in a specific area, who want to learn it, and they learn not by sitting and reading books, but actually doing things. And it's really fascinating, a fascinating community. Before I was working on ROS on Windows, I was a dev lead for the Microsoft Maker team. And through that, we invested tons of resources, tons of energy into getting started guides, Arduino ecosystem, bridging the ecosystem into Windows, into Azure. You might not know the face, but that's Massimo Bonzi, who is one of the founders of Arduino. He actually was an art teacher who wanted to leverage microcontrollers for producing art. But what ended up happening was that it was really hard. You had to program PIC controllers, you had to do C++ or even assembly. So he worked with a crew to bring up this board, the Arduino, and it was revolutionary. Makers are also were responsible for that inflection point for IoT devices, where it was kind of humming along and then makers happen, and because of the ease of use and the proliferation of devices, the IoT ecosystem exploded. I'm looking forward to leveraging that same maker moment for robotics, where we build systems that are simple enough that people can use them and onboard with them and help build on each other to actually lead to that maker moment. And I actually think ROS-2 is going to be a considerable solution for that. I see the chat window is popping up, but I don't see how to open up the chat window. Zoom.
It's just Matt Robinson saying, yay, makers.
Yes, and I love makers.
Simple to use.
Sorry, I'm being a cheerleader.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, so I am a maker, I'm a big maker. And one of the things in the last few years, I haven't really engaged with the maker community. And that's something I'm changing through some of our investments in getting started guides, getting started videos, and things like that. But I also encourage you to do this as well, the ROS industrial community. So, but what's missing from that maker moment? What are things that are preventing that citizen roboticist from occurring? Cognitive load in ROS is huge. I mean, just CMake alone makes you want to just beat your head against the wall. We need to think about low code or no code solutions. And I'll talk about one that we're going to invest in. But we also want to make it so that standing up an end to end is really easy. Like, here, do these 5 things and you have a robot that navigates your environment. It's kind of hard today. Exciting scenarios. Sim to real is, how do we minimize the gap between simulation and reality, but also how do we actually get real life into simulation so that if you can scan your house, you can actually import it in simulation, work with it, and then transition things back into real. On the hardware side, low-cost precision drive platforms. Everything seems to cost $3,000. I don't know why that is. Unless you go for the really kind of low-end devices like a JetBot, which we'll be doing some videos on. Low-cost precision arms. There's that $1,000 price point that seems to be just out of reach of makers. And precision sensors. I mean, we have cameras, but when you start talking depth, your depth cameras start to become a little more on the expensive side. So I think that there's an opportunity here to reduce costs. SparkFun is one of my favorite maker technologies, and they actually produce a ton of devices. So I'm actually going to blast through because I think I ate up about half my time talking about things like that. Make Code is a block-like programming language that you can install today. You can go to microsoft.com/make code. Works great for Lego class devices. We're looking at what it would take to bridge to ROS. Okay, so that's one of the side projects. A lot of people are actually interested in holographic user interfaces for robotics, and we are doing some active investments here. So the Hololens 2 is the top of the line holographic display from Microsoft. It's not really holograms. It basically just projects images in front of your eyes that are locked to the world. So in 2015, while I was on the maker team, we built a robot to demonstrate holograms on top of robotics. And this was, I actually have all of this code. I'm trying to actively make it available for ROS. But it's a surprisingly natural way to interact with robots. Giving it command and control, reaching out and grabbing an arm and dragging it and seeing it move before the physical robot does is pretty powerful. So what are we, oh, I stole this, Matt, from one of your websites. And this is a gigantic robot that interacts with a robot airframe. Validating that it's not going to punch through the airframe before you execute it is something that's going to be, I think, pretty powerful using this tech. So that's for you, Matt. We are building a extension of the mixed reality toolkit, specifically targeting ROS-2. Robot-specific UI components in Unity, a way of pinning holographic space and robot space, and we're building it on top of ROS2.net and actively contributing to ROS2.net, which was a product by Steve Fernandez. Really cool tech. So I'll talk a little bit about what this looks like. So the software stack. Your robot runs ROS2. Optionally, you can leverage a spatial anchor service from Microsoft that allows you to pin or create an anchor in space that is relatively resilient to changes in the environment, although this is an optional phase. On the HoloLens 2, we're actually running ROS2, the ROS2 infrastructure inside of a universal Windows application that is wrapped by Unity. We've been working with eProsima on the FastDDS middleware and bringing it and making it UWP friendly. On top of the real ROS2 infrastructure, we're running ROS2.net, which are .NET bindings for ROS-2. And we're actively contributing to that, adding support for like quality of service, adding support for action servers and action clients, and we add support for arrays and nested objects and things like that. So we're actively contributing to ROS2.NET. On top of that is the Mixed Reality Toolkit, which is a product from the Mixed Reality team for building holographic user interfaces. And then you build your application on top and you ship your application to the store. We're not actually producing a application that we're going to sell. We're trying to empower you to build your application. And we're building the infrastructure so that it should work on a HoloLens 1, but we're targeting a HoloLens 2, which means that x64 or ARM64. Okay. So how does it work? Does this have animations? Yeah, okay. So I mentioned that pinning holographic space is important. Part of how we do that is an open source model using April tags, or the service model using Azure Spatial Anchors, which allows you to have holographic space pin itself to robot space, and then you can use standard TF in your Unity application to transform information from the robot into holographic space. So that's what we're building. This has been a project pretty much all summer, and we are really close to getting this working. We will be exposing the ROS2 install as a Unity extension, so Unity Package Manager. So you can go to the Package Manager, install ROS, the Mixed Reality Toolkit for ROS. It'll drop into your application, you fire it up, and you start getting LiDAR data or whatever data you're interested in. We will be providing UI elements that bind to specific things. So if you drop in the move base element, you'll be able to click in space and provide waypoints that are transmitted to move base. So that's holographic. We're also investing in natural language interaction. We have, let me blast through that. We have a service from Microsoft called Language Understanding Service that uses AI to actually distill human speech into intentions. This is published right now, so you can try it out. Consider it in preview because latency is unusable right now. We are working on adding support for containers so that you can actually drop containers down onto a device and have local playback. And we're also working on behaviors for command and control, as well as speech. So our friends at Highwind did a demo of voice interaction using ROS on Windows with the language understanding node, although this works on Windows and Linux. So, go to the home position. So that's pretty fun too. Gestures. I am currently recording my video with an Azure Connect, which is the development kit from Microsoft that includes the depth sensor out of HoloLens. We just announced a partnership with Zig to release a version of this, and we are in talks with other industrial camera manufacturers. The ROS node that we maintain actually will work on the industrialized versions. One of the things that was added was body tracking. So the gesture-based control is actually feasible. And we're looking at adding solvers so that you can actually point and then say move to this point, and we'll compute the elbow to wrist angle and actually provide a ray into the environment. So I only have two more things that I wanted to talk about real quick. This one is an incubation, a thought experiment, which is the simulation construction kit. That's what I'm calling it. Microsoft has a product called Microsoft Maquette, and you can go to maquette.microsoft. You can install it on a Windows VR headset or a Vive, or I think it also works in Oculus. But it allows you to build environments in VR. And we thought, well, wouldn't it be cool if we can build an environment in VR and then export it to Gazebo or to AirSim? So that's a side project that we're looking into, using VR to actually generate simulation environments. This is one of the demos where they show how you can build up systems and then run what if you build it in VR and then drop it in the gazebo and use it for running your simulation. Now, finally, accessible robotics. Accessibility in any environment is important. It's 1 in 10 need to have access, and the unemployment rate is surprisingly high. What can we do to take all the technology we're building from robotics and bring it to people who can use this to empower their lives? So during our Microsoft's hackathon, we worked on with a Hello robot and used our voice control. We actually incubated our voice control for one of our employees who has cerebral palsy and can't use their hands. So can they use robotics and deep pose processing and natural language processing and all of this navigation technology that we're building for warehousing and pick and place and things like that, and use it in the home. So so we had a quick demo of it moving through his environment. We did tune it down so that it didn't do something ballistic before we had a chance to emergency stop it. But this was a project that we worked on. Anyway, that's all I had. I think I hit 20 minutes. So if you have any questions, please do reach out to us. If you've used Windows and you've hit bugs, please reach out to us. Check out the landing page, aka.ms/ROS. And that's all I had. Anyway, feel free to reach out to me if you have questions offline. And like I said, we are actively trying to get the HoloLens workstream out the door as fast as I can. Tried to get it out by ROSCON, but that didn't happen. So I'll let you know as soon as it's turning over on the HoloLens.